council had to vote for the money for high school. And they even had this guy.
Ernie Thompson was an important activist in Orange in the 1960s. Among his many activities, he helped to desegregate the Orange schools and built the new Orange High School. Recently, we spoke to his daughter and son who grew up in Orange.
Well, my father and mother, I think, are extraordinary people because they really wanted to see a better America, and they absolutely put their lives on the line to make it a better place. My dad, Ernie Thompson, came from Maryland, and he moved north to Bayonne, New Jersey, when he was a teenager, at a time when many black people were moving north. It was called the Great Migration. And he got a job at a factory, and terrible, terrible, terrible working conditions in the factory. So like many other people, he helped to organize unions, and he became a union leader. In fact, he was the first black person to be hired to be a full-time organizer for his union, the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America. And he went on to become one of the foremost black union organizers in the whole United States of America. And he was a leader of a group called the National Negro Labor Council, which was leading campaigns for equality of black workers all across America. So he's very renowned, very respected, and his peers, who were the other black workers who were leading this kind of work, organizing unions, thought of him as one of the great strategists of what they were doing. He had a really keen ability to look at a situation and figure out what to do to make it better, how to win. They called him Big Train because he could deliver the goods.
My dad married a white woman in the late, early 50s. So that was controversial at the time. So I'm mixed. I persevered by really just hanging in there with the discipline and struggling like a struggling artist to become connected with the artists that I eventually worked with: Aretha Franklin, Alicia Keys, Usher, Babyface, Shaka Khan, Donnell Jones, Joe. And so my dad, being able to come up from the South and create something out of nothing, showed me how to take very little and make something happen out of it. And I think that's the key. Number one thing, practice, that I learned from him. And also honor your commitments. Once you commit yourself to something, finish it. Because if you're not a finisher, if you just start projects and you never finish them, you never go anywhere. He had another theory, which I'm writing a song about, was called Retreat to the Ghetto and Come Back Strong. When they would try to go and deal with white people dealing with politics and stuff would fail, they would have strikes and things that didn't work. They would always retreat to the ghetto, get a new plan, and come back strong. So that's what I do. When things ain't working, I retreat to the ghetto and come back strong.
When he came to Orange, having done all this work all over the nation, although he was very discouraged because he'd lost his job, he was somebody who had a lot of skills. He really knew how to do organizing. So although all the people that were, all the people who lived in Seven Oaks were, rich and powerful and they had all the money and all the jobs, my dad had the skills. And so he would prepare very carefully. He would get everybody organized. And he always said that better preparation and better skills can beat money.
I was also mentioning that my dad did a lot of work with Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson, if you're familiar with him, was a Renaissance man who went to Rutgers University in New Jersey, son of a preacher, and he ended up speaking 23 different languages fluently and was one of the first blacks to graduate Columbia Law School. He had 17 varsity letters in sports, twice All-American in football, and he was a freedom fighter, basically. He fought for equality for all people. He became probably the world's best-known actor at the time, pioneered being the first black in motion pictures that was a star. He was an international opera singer. He sang for the kings and queens of England.
At the time that I was a little kid, all the neighbors knew that the schools in Orange were segregated.
At a time when Orange was segregated, there was a fence that bordered one side of Orange Park where the black ghetto was, where black people had to live. And as you can see, it still stands here today. And over on the other side, where the white community is, there is no fence.
There was a famous little bus, was called the Green Bus, which used to take white kids who lived on the other side of Orange Park from where we lived, so closest to East Orange, over to Haywood Avenue School, while black kids who lived where I did by Orange Park walked across the park to go to Oakwood Avenue School. So the white kids who were closer to Oakwood went to Haywood, and kids in my neighborhood who were closer to Haywood went to Oakwood, and that was because of race. My parents found out about this, and then with other neighbors decided that they would fight it. They had to change the form of government so that a black person could get elected to represent the black community. And that took a long time. That took 5 years. That was a hard campaign. Once they got the form of government changed, then they were able to elect the first black councilman, Ben Jones. And when Ben Jones got in office, and Dr. Alexander then became president of the Board of Education, they learned something terrible. And that is that the state had been telling the city of Orange for about 20 years that the high school was inadequate and that they were going to lose accreditation if they didn't make a new high school. But the Board of Education were well-to-do people who lived in Seven Oaks, and they didn't care. So the first story is school desegregation, and the second story is changing the form of government. The third story is figuring out how to mobilize and how to explain to everybody why there needed to be a new high school and how to improve the educational system. Basically, at that time, kids who were going to college got a good education in Orange schools, and that was about 20% of the kids. And kids who were not, kids who were going to leave high school and go to work, got a terrible education, and that was 80% of the kids, black and white.
So a lot of people in the neighborhood that wanted change didn't really want to get off their butt and work for change. So my father was the motivational factor that got them, a lot of young black professionals who had money coming in, but maybe wanted to live the sporting life and just lay back with their money and chill. He got them to go and work for the community and get involved in local action to make changes in the community involving education, desegregation, more funding for the schools, and equal rights and opportunities for young blacks and other minorities. And people came together and united to create change.
My dad was this brilliant, well-trained organizer who was in Orange kind of by an accident of fate, but discovered that the problems that he'd been fighting all his life, the problems Rosa Parks was fighting, the problems Martin Luther King were fighting, were right here in Orange. And so he used all of his skills to make this a better place. And when somebody does that, a place has changed for the better forever. So Orange has suffered a lot, as all American cities have, because we're not a country that takes good care of our cities. But we're a much better city than we would have been if Ernie Thompson hadn't come here and started to organize and demanded respect for the black people of the city.